Look, test prop feels like magic to some people. Yeah. It's just the ester that like mimics their hormone fluctuations, doesn't stick around long enough, and ends up just jiving with their body. And Cypionate, especially like in high doses, man, you go above 150 milligrams, I just think over the years I've seen you're more likely to run into problems. Now, a lot of that usually has to do with the fact that people can't dial in aromatase inhibitors, they can't control estrogen, there's just too much of a constant saturation of estrogen. But at the same time, there's a slow release, especially if you're dosing kind of high on Cypionate, and that just tends to cause problems for people. I mean, think about it. Between Cypionate and prop, you've got one ester that builds up in fat tissue and is a slower diffusion to the sexual tissues. Then you got another ester that shoots up really quickly, like hits the sexual organ and gives you the intrapenile DHT, aids erections massively, and it does so really quickly. There's a big difference between central nervous system androgen levels peaking really quickly and central nervous system androgen levels slowly peaking and never really kind of giving you a bang for your buck. So let's talk about the ester mismatch, all right? Why Cypionate wrecks some guys and why propionate can be magic. All right, boys, before we start the video, look, Cortex Labs is a TRT guidance sexual dysfunction resolution and performance optimization company. Primarily what we do is do coaching and consults with men that are on HRT to dial in their protocols better, specifically around libido and erections. I've got a couple options, either a one-off call, okay, with me, or longer one-on-one package. You have serious sexual dysfunction, really need to dial in and have the budget, book me for a longer-term package. You can do that in under a minute at livecortex.com. We also have a nootropics act that is powerful and not for the faint of heart. Turns on in about 20 minutes, gives you good brain function. It's called Torque. I built it. It's down in the description of this video. Okay, so there's this long-standing phenomenon of people using testosterone Cypionate at average doses. I mean, 140 to 200 milligrams a week is an average dose. But then they end up feeling tired and emotionally blunted and sexually dull. How is it that you're taking testosterone, but you feel sexually dull? But then suddenly, you know, like everything comes alive on kind of a low, moderate dose, daily dose prop injections, test propionate. It's not placebo, my friends, all right? It's pharmacokinetics, tissue dynamics, and receptor signaling rhythm. My first point I want to make, look, not all esters are created equal. There's going to be a lot of guys on the web that say test is test, and what they're implying is that it doesn't matter. If it's test prop, it's test anything, it's test Cypionate, it's all the same. It's just going to end up turning into testosterone in your body, and there is no difference. But the truth is, I mean, just looking at the dynamics of how the drug metabolizes in the system, Cypionate is a 7 to 8 day half-life, which means it's a really slow release of testosterone. Propionate is a 2-day half-life. Like, it's like 24 hours, man. That means faster peak and cleaner trough. But both of them deliver testosterone. So this is where the test is test argument comes in. Like, they both deliver testosterone. Okay, but the timing and intensity is vastly different between these two esters. You know, Cypionate has this long, kind of dull essence to it, which can equal for some people a state of like a low-level androgen fog. But prop, like for those of you that have dosed test propionate, you know it's more of a sharp peak, like it just hits the central nervous system. You feel this almost as if you're taking a very powerful dopamine-centered nootropic. You get clarity, you get libido, you get central nervous system drive, you get DHT. I mean, you get a lot of DHT with prop, man, and you get a bolus of it, you know, in most cases at once, and it feels good. It could be the case that testosterone Cypionate kind of wrecks some guys, and they have a really hard time finding their dose unless they go down to a pretty small dose doing daily shallow intramuscular injections. That Cypionate kind of coats the brain a little too evenly. You know what I mean? It's just coating all of the tissues where you need testosterone little too evenly. Not enough of a pulse, which really gets you an androgenic effect at the tissues and otherwise masculinizing, sexual enhancing, central nervous system stimulating effect in terms of libido. So like, you know, with Cypionate, you kind of get a little bit of a loss of the natural pulsality, okay? The pulsality of your own intratesticular born testosterone that's stimulated from luteinizing hormone. Like say you were just a natty. You get pulsatility with that testosterone. So like you never get any degree of receptor modification, receptor desensitization, receptor downregulation. I don't think that's going to happen to some substantial degree, but if you're coating the tissues constantly, especially with higher doses of test Cypionate, that might happen, which is going to lead to you really not feeling the effects of androgens over time. But like with prop as an example, you get, if you're injecting in the morning, which I suggest you do, you get these morning surges. You get this surge in testosterone, and that feels really fucking good for the beginning part of the day. Boy, does it feel good. You get a plausibly better receptor sensitivity because you have off periods. You know, you have this peak, but then you got a pretty clean trough. It's not just sticking around constantly. Cypionate builds up in your fat tissue, okay? Especially if you're injecting sub-Q every day, which I just don't suggest you do that. I really don't suggest anybody at this point do sub-Q Cypionate. I think that some people can make it work, but ideally you're going to want to put it into the muscle. Even if you're doing daily injections, you just get a 5/8 inch needle and do that daily at a small dose. But a slower diffusion, like if you're doing sub-Q and, you know, it's whatever dose of Cypionate, you're getting a slower diffusion of that testosterone Cypionate into the tissues. Whereas even if you kept the same dose, but you just injected into the glute every day with a 5/8 inch needle and you did it intramuscular, you'd get a faster diffusion of the compound into the tissues. Propionate peaks quicker than any other ester, right? Any other of the injectable esters like that we would ordinarily use. I mean, we're not going to be using test suspension here, right? So you get a quicker rise in penile and central nervous system androgen levels. You know, do you know what that feels like when you have a quick rise in the central nervous system of androgens and you're able to get that DHT conversion via 5-alpha reductase 2 in penile tissue? It's pretty fucking phenomenal, man. This is why guys switch from SIP to prop and have erections back. And they didn't really even have to dial anything in. They're just like, oh, let me just start at 30 milligrams a day. And it works. All right, so now that that's out of the way, I mean, those are the primary differences, and I think you can make Cypionate work. I think what I found over time is that you either need a high dose and an AI, and you'll be able to tolerate AIs, and some people can't, or you need like a relatively low dose, like 100 milligrams a week, and to do it pretty frequently, but get it into the muscle. But I would say this, okay? Now, estrogen plays a role in this, prolactin plays a role in this. It's primarily estrogen that tends to cause a lot of these symptoms, but this is what would point to an ester mismatch for you. Number one, stronger physically, but dull emotionally. Yeah, look, I mean, test SIP, like, man, if you're injecting 200 milligrams a week, you're going to be fucking strong as an ox, dude. I mean, definitely. Your protein synthesis is going to be highly, highly upregulated, and you will be strong in the gym, and as long as you're working out and eat right, you're going to look big. But, I mean, you might be dull emotionally because you have no break from testosterone, right? And you're converting a lot to estrogen, and that's constant. And if it's just too high for you, I mean, again, high estrogen tends to inhibit dopamine firing from the arcuate nucleus. I mean, this is the stage of the brain, center of the brain where, you know, you need it to be released, prolactin inhibiting hormone specifically, otherwise known as dopamine, in order to control pituitary prolactin. That gets inhibited by estradiol. And when that happens, you have serotonin dominance, which guess what? That means emotional dullness. I mean, it's similar to anhedonia. You know, anhedonia is characterized by a lot of things, but part of the problem is dopamine is just not firing adequately. Another thing that points to a mismatch in ester is like your labs look fine, but you're like tired at various points of the day. Yeah, that's because you're not getting enough of a central nervous system stimulation of androgens. Another mismatch is that erections are technically functional, but they lack in like sensitivity and continued rigidness. You're going to find people on 150 milligrams of Cypionate or above that either can't tolerate AIs or their clinic told them they don't have to manage estrogen, or they've been watching some of these wacky YouTube channels that tell you that estrogen doesn't really matter and it can go as high as it wants to. And then these guys are lacking erection rigidity and sexual sensation. Like there's no point in living life like this, especially if you have a girlfriend, right, or a partner. Having a lack of sensation is fucking miserable, man. Another symptom of an ester mismatch, or just like higher dose SIP isn't for you, that your climax is like detached from your body. You know, like your ability to climax is it's just very minimal, and that whole powerful visceral feeling of climaxing is just completely disconnected. And I know a lot of you guys have felt this. Whereas, like, I'm not saying prop is for everybody, right? But if prop is for you, because it is for some people, just better, you're going to notice that the erections are rigid, they stay, they feel normal, they feel very natural. Estrogen does not climb too high. It might peak and then it troughs. It doesn't constantly stick around. You're going to have better sensation, and you're going to be a hell of a lot more connected to your climax. It'll feel a lot more like the natural hormonal rhythm or the natural sexual function system does in terms of sensation and climax. All right, all that said, let's talk about the brass tacks. This is how you make testosterone Cypionate work, and if you can't make it work, this is how you make testosterone propionate work. Number one, with testosterone Cypionate, the bottom line is between 130 and 200 milligrams plus per week. You're probably going to need to control estrogen. This is for normal aromatizers. You know, this is obviously for over aromatizers. Yeah, you take it from 130 to 200 plus, like you're going to need to control estrogen. I'm just at this point, I'm very, very confident saying that. And I know I'm going to piss a lot of pro-estrogen people off, but that's okay. I have enough data to say this very confidently. And that's all good and fine, right? But like, not everyone can tolerate AIs. You know, I've been talking a lot more about that and have focused on that subset of people that just can't tolerate estrogen reduction via aromatase inhibition. So, okay, if you can tolerate AIs, great. Do your 150 to 200. Inject, 3 times a week. Take your AI on this first injection. Let it roll throughout the rest of the week. Find the dose that works well for you for Aromacin or Arimidex. And plenty of people can dial in that way. However, as I've been saying, the second subset of people are not going to be able to tolerate AIs, and they're just going to have to go down to 100 milligrams a week. Preferably, from my sort of professional experience in this, you're going to want to be injecting that daily, and you're going to want to be getting that into the muscle. The best way to do that is to do it in even 100 milligrams, right? But 98 milligrams would be 7 units on an insulin syringe. So 14 milligrams a day is 98 milligrams, basically 100 milligrams a week. And you just put that in a 5/8 inch needle every day, 7 units, and you inject that in the glute. Those insulin needles are not going to cause scar tissue. They're very, very thin and very, very small, and you won't have a problem long-term doing that. All it is a 2-minute ordeal in the morning. That's how you make Cypionate work right there. Okay, it's rarer. I should say it's more rare to just be able to take Cypionate and not have to do anything else. If you're doing higher dose, you're doing 130 to 200 milligrams plus. You're gonna have to manage estrogen, man. You're gonna have to do stuff to change your protocol. It's gonna shut you down further. You might need more HCG. That HCG is going to cause more estrogen, right? That's going to be harder to dial in. With prop, let's switch to prop for a second. Honestly, as I've said before, the best starting dose, well, let's call it a dose range for test prop, is just 20 to 40 milligrams a day. That's it. You load that up in a syringe. This should be at the very least a 5/8 inch needle so that you can get it into the muscle. But you could shoot for a 1 inch, very, very thin gauge needle, or a 1.5 inch, very, very thin gauge needle, because those exist on Amazon as well. And you just send that in the delt, or you send that in the glute. I wouldn't suggest doing prop sub-Q. That's where you get a lot of tissue burning and tissue damage, and you get this, whole post-injection pain thing. It is a pain in the ass, and it does suck. You can avoid a lot of that by just getting into the muscle. You might still have some, but it's not going to be as intense, and it largely goes away over time. I think what people are going to find is that if that's enough testosterone for them, 20 to 40 milligrams of prop per day, they're going to find that like all the benefits of a surge of testosterone they get. They get the central nervous stimulation, they get libido, they get some dopamine synthesis via tyrosine hydroxylase upregulation. You're going to get a good enough saturation of dihydrotestosterone when you use prop. Yeah, prop is like probably, all of the ester is definitely the most facilitative of DHT. If I go above 40 milligrams as my, kind of threshold on prop, then I start to get some hair loss. Like start to notice my hair thinning, there's like open spots in my hair, and it's not particularly good. But the reason that's happening is because there's more DHT, which equals less subcutaneous tissue on the scalp, which equals less protection for the hair follicles, and they start to get unhealthy as a result. That's really the mechanism by which DHT starts to destroy your hair because it's a dry compound. It's a drying compound. That's why it does that. But if you can find a dose that doesn't cause, hair loss or otherwise excessive DHT problems like a lot of acne, then you're still going to get a surge, a central nervous system surge, a penile androgen surge, in androgens, and you're going to both feel great and function sexually really, really well. But with prop, I've noticed people on regular doses of prop, they need either less HCG or no HCG. Well, this is probably the case because, as the studies say, there's less suppression with fast-acting esters. There's just less suppression of the system. So you might be able to get away with just aiding the estrogen dynamic even further because you don't have to take HCG, which tends to increase estrogen. But if you have to run HCG 100 IU every day, 100 IU every other day, that's really not going to substantially increase estradiol. And the greatest thing about prop is it's so good at moderate doses that even if you do have to bring in maybe some Masteron to manage estrogen like a tad bit, or a real small dose of an AI to manage estrogen a tad bit, there's not a whole lot you have to do to prop protocols. Bottom line is this. I'll end with this closing message. You're not crazy, okay? If testosterone cypionate makes you strong, but numb, it's probably the ester, all right? Not the hormone. You need rhythm, all right? Rhythm. This is why the troughs are so good with prop, and the trough peaks and troughs make a little more sense with lower dose intramuscular cypionate because you need rhythm. not just volume. I understand that prop is a little harder to get right now from the clinics, and that is a pain in the ass, but there are still some clinics that use prop and can get prop, and I would encourage you to look for them. But listen, boys, not all esters are created equal. They're not. We want to put to bed the notion that test is test. Test is not test. These esters are dramatically different. They behave dramatically different, and they make you feel and function completely different. Prop isn't magic for everybody. Maybe it is for you. It's up to you to experiment. But as I said in the beginning, listen, if you need a person that has done this 1,000 times and has been through every scenario many, many times, just hire me for TRT coaching. We either do a call where I'm going to hear your situation out, fact find with you, and help facilitate you getting on the protocol that works. Or listen, for longer term stuff, man, especially if you got a libido and erection issues, that's going to take some dialing in. But the great thing is we will get it done. I mean, we'll get you to the point where you're rock hard for sex. Your libido for your girl, for your partner, for whoever is insatiable. That's my job. I take pride in being able to do that, and we'll get it done. Hire me, all right, for either a one-off call or a 3-month or a 6-month ongoing one-on-one package where you get my attention and you're working directly with me. You can do that stuff in under a minute at livecortex.com. Go buy the Torque Stack. This thing's powerful. Again, before this, I was into nootropics, consulting CEOs on it. This is a lot of experience. I built one, and it is one of the most powerful nootropic stack that is on the market. I mean, coffee's great, but you take 2 of these with some coffee, you're going to be in a completely different world. Believe me, buy a bottle. It's my brainchild. You're going to love it. Pretty much everybody that buys it loves the stack. It's down in the description of this video. Go buy a bottle of Torque. Well, all right. Brother, it has been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you. 2 things I want you to do for me. Like the video, bro. Makes a huge difference to our channel and means a lot to me, honestly, you know, like inside of my heart. All right, so please hit the like button. Takes you a second free to do. Really helps this channel. Otherwise, sub to the channel. Many more breakdowns on HRT, TRT, different esters, primarily sexual function. That is what we talk about here, backed by science. This is Cortex Labs. Love to have you as a subscriber. Hope you're having a great week. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Kick ass, rock on. Saturday live stream. Look forward to that. Probably around 11 or noon sometime. I appreciate you being here, and I'll talk to you boys in the next one.